regardless of their viewpoint, can acknowledge that the loss of a woman's life is tragic. And along with that, things in this city have been very tense for several weeks, and it is a very emotional situation, and it's very divisive and politically charged. So that is why I have been asking all of our elected officials to please ask for peace and ask for calm. And as you mentioned, our police officers responded immediately. I responded immediately to the scene once I heard there was a report of a shooting. But unfortunately, as our officers were trying to leave today and trying to keep the peace, to preserve the crime scene so that there can be an investigation, so that there can be some level of, a finding related to what actually happened, our men and women became the object of hate, vitriol, and just the frustration that has been building in this community for weeks.
So, I mean, obviously it's very concerning. And I know in the context of that, what Whitney's talking about, how close this is to actually what happened with George Floyd, right? And what your city went through. But when you talk about politicians, there's different video angles out there now, and that's what we have. It did play out on video. The angle that President Trump is sharing appears to show the agent bumped by the vehicle. And he, of course, is characterizing it, as he wrote, that the woman driving the car was disorderly, obstructing and resisting, and then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer. Is that what happened here? Is that the version you see, or is it different?
I would tell you this much. We owe it to this woman, to her family, and to the American public to ensure that an investigation does occur, and that investigation occurs and it follows all of the available evidence to its logical conclusion. That being said, I can also tell you law enforcement in the United States has been training for many years to try and avoid incidents like this whenever possible, to try and avoid having law enforcement officers placed into a situation with an unarmed motorist where they may have to use force. That's why there is an emphasis on proportionality, an emphasis on, if you are able to identify a license plate, identify who the person is, follow up afterwards if there is some independent crime that did occur prior to the incident.
Right. And of course, in this case, all that was readily available. We can all see the license plate information. That would have been very easy to do. And then I'm just stating the facts. Now, President Trump said it's hard to believe he's alive, but he's now recovering in the hospital, referring to the ICE agent. We understand he's been discharged. I'm curious, Chief, though, how you see this, because we're looking at him now as after the incident, walking away, he was adjusting his face mask after he was bumped. Obviously, he appears fine there. Do you know anything about him, who he is, whatever happened to him? Obviously, he looks fine there. He was bumped. He's out of whatever checkup he had.
There were at a minimum, dozens and dozens, if maybe not a few hundred, federal law enforcement officers on the scene. I did not speak to anyone, at least none of them told me that they were there when the shooting actually occurred. But I was very specific about asking if anyone else was injured, and at the time I was told that it was only the woman. So I don't know anything further.
Right. Well, it's important what you say. Again, all we have is the video, and he's fine, and we know he's out of the hospital. So it would seem that he's lucky to come out with his life would be unfair. So the Homeland Security Kristi Noem was speaking just a few moments ago, Chief, and she said today was preventable, which actually is interesting because you're saying it was as well, in part because of what officers are trained to avoid these sorts of situations. But that's a different approach to the word preventable than she is using. Here's what she said.
It's very clear that this individual was harassing and impeding law enforcement operations. Our officer followed his training, did exactly what he's been taught to do in that situation, and took actions to defend himself and defend his fellow law enforcement officers.
From what you said before, it sounds like you see it a bit differently.
Well, I cannot speak to the training of federal law enforcement officers. I have never been a federal law enforcement officer, but what their policies or trainings are. What I can speak to is my familiarity with what city police officers are trained in the majority of cities around the country, and the way that training has been going for many, many years. And certainly in the last 5 years, especially in this city, which did burn 5 years ago, police officers have been trained with a very, very strong emphasis on de-escalation, on using time and distance and cover to try and prevent police officers from getting injured and civilians from getting injured whenever possible.
Chief O'Hara, a moment ago we heard your mayor, Jacob Fry, telling ICE to get the F out of Minneapolis, and he obviously used the word. When they said, though, this is going to be the largest enforcement ever, if that came from ICE, and then they put 2,000 officers, they said that was the number, that we're going to be on your streets. Leading up to that and where we are at this moment right now, this incredibly fraught, tense moment, is ICE coordinating with you as the chief of Minneapolis Police at all? Are they telling you what they're doing in any way, shape, or form? Or are you two ships in the night on the same streets?
So there is no coordination regarding immigration enforcement. And I do believe our federal law enforcement partners in general respect the fact that there is a separation between what we are lawfully able to do and what they do. And that being said, just to be clear, there are many, many professional federal law enforcement officials that live in Minnesota that perform their job very, very well, that do work with us to do things other than immigration enforcement. They help us to go after people who are actually out on the street committing violent crimes, to go after shooters and murderers, people who are smuggling illegal drugs into the country. And we are very grateful for those